Mental Training 101. And now back to Get Warrior Tough with Andrew and Dutch.
All right, we're back at it. As promised before the break, I want to give you a more benign example, one that'll hit all of us a lot closer to home, because we're like, a lot of us be like, well, I don't do drugs, and I'm not addicted. This will give you a good example of how the brain gets hijacked. Whenever you fall in love with that first crush when you were in high school, you do really, really dumb stuff. I mean, dumb stuff. But it doesn't matter, because as long as you're with that person, you're getting that dopamine dump, and you can't get enough of it. And so that cycle continues, and it's almost like you can't breathe. This is the kind of language you use. I can't breathe if I'm not around them. And you literally, your brain thinks that I can't survive unless I'm right here in the presence of that person.
That is crazy. And I love the term hijack, because, again, we keep reverting back to drug use, right? What do you say when you're on drugs? You're high, right?
Yeah. So
you're hijacked. The drug says hijack your brain. And so when you say hijacked, it's the same thing. So that's critical to understand that that's what we're doing to ourselves. We're just not using a substance. So
right.
Go ahead. I'm loving this.
Yeah, okay. So, and this is the thing. I want to bring this home. I'm going to drive it straight home, because a lot of us have this thing, well, I don't do drugs, or I don't do cocaine or heroin. And so now there's this big thing that marijuana is okay and alcohol is legal, so that's all right. And cigarettes are okay because that's legal. And listen, or food and sugar is another one. Sugar, the drug, it doesn't matter what substance or the action is that you're doing to your body, the drug that you're addicted to is the dopamine. All you're doing, so listen, anytime that your brain is hijacked, this is addictive behavior. It is bad, bad, bad for you. It's a downward spiral, and it doesn't necessarily, we'll say it's cocaine, or we'll say it's drugs, or we'll say it's this. It could be any of those things, including falling in love, right? That the thing that you're addicted to is not the external thing. You're addicted to that dopamine dump. And it's all these things, what they do is they aid getting the intense, speedy, reliable dopamine dump, and it's a shortcut to get the dopamine. Right, I want to lay that out, because that way we're not, because it's so easy, Dutch, to say, well, I don't do that.
Right, and it's always, no matter what you're doing, it's always good to understand the root. And we always talk about that when we're out talking to clients.
Yep.
The root, we always get down to the root. And a lot of people don't do it. They look at the external, they look on the surface. And so when you're naming those things, you end up blaming those things. But if you cure the root and you learn how to get control of your mind, then no matter what that external or what the surface situation is, it's going to be less likely to happen to you, because you have a superior control over your brain and your mind state. So that's what and why this information is important.
Right. I want to be in control. I'm in charge. I'm CEO of me. I'm not letting my brain get hijacked by the emotions to run the boardroom. I'm not doing it. I refuse to abdicate that power. And if that means that I don't, do drugs, or I have to stop eating sugar, or I'm not drinking alcohol, or any of those things, right? So, but here's the thing. This is the funny thing about the human machine, man. We get desensitized to this stuff really fast. We develop a tolerance. So when you repeat that thing, because you're like, I have to have it, I have to survive. Well, even with the crush, right? You want to be around that person, right? So you get overstimulated, then the number of dopamine receptors is reduced, because I keep hitting it and keep hitting it, and the original dosage gives me a less reward. I get less reward. So now I've got to up the dosage in order to open up more dopamine receptors so that I can try to achieve that original high. And eventually, you can't do it. That's why we OD on stuff. And it's not just OD on drugs. You OD on behaviors and all kinds of stuff, because you're just trying to stave off withdrawal at that point. It's not even about feeling good anymore. It's about not feeling bad when it goes
Absolutely.
away.
Absolutely. And a lot of those things that we're talking about, it's not just that's why it's so good to understand the root, because it's not love that's killing you.
No,
it's the mismanagement of it. You don't understand what you're going. Yes, you don't understand. So, like, the dopamine is a natural part of your body, right? But the difference is, when you understand it, you can control it more. So you can manage it. You can manage the dosages better. So that means you can still be in love with someone, but you understand what's happening. So you can manage the dosages as they're coming out. You're in control of your mind. So you're in control of all those things, even though you're still in love. It's not it's not taking you to the point of being irrational or
Right.
doing things that's going to hurt yourself, or letting the dopamine come at an uncontrollable, unmanageable level or
right,
dose.
and that's why my mind is taking over the boardroom, and I'm rerouting those neural pathways to go through my prefrontal cortex, the executive part of my brain, where I make logical decisions. I'm going to separate out logic from emotion to bring it back around to get warrior tough language, right? So, and understand, yes, I'm crazy in love with you, but I know that that's not a smart thing to do. Like, because it takes me away from my target. And if you don't have a target, so this is the thing. If you don't have a target, then you can't answer this question. Does this help me or hurt me get to my target? And then understand how I feel about something is not relevant to me getting to my target. If you don't understand, and if you don't beat down that pathway, you will be at the mercy of the dopamine spiral. Now, here's how we reroute. By habits, because habits play an important role in our health, both good and bad, right? So understanding how the biopsychology of how we develop these routines that are either harmful to us and we need to break those, or we embrace the healthy ones that would help us get to our targets. It's all about habits and things that trigger those habits or those autopilot programs. Let's talk about the triggers right now, Dutch, because this will set you up. Even though you might have changed a habit, you might have stopped smoking. I knew somebody who stopped smoking for years and years and years, and there was some trigger. They always had a cigarette when they drank, and they'd stop drinking, so they stopped smoking. And then there was some stressful situation. I was with them, and they had a drink, and they immediately said, well, I got to have a cigarette. And so then they started smoking again. They didn't have another drink after that, but now that trigger started the habit of smoking again.
Now, everyone listening should be shaking their head, because everyone's seen either that example, heard of that example, or seen something very close to that. So this is real life stuff. This is stuff we've experienced, but we just didn't understand it. So we're bringing you around now to this stuff, because there are people out there who were former smokers or former social drinkers. And I've heard that a bunch of times. Well, the only time I smoke is when I drink. The only time I drink is when I smoke.
Right.
I've heard that a million times. Whenever I drink coffee, I have to have a cigarette, or I do. So
Good thing I don't do that. I would have been chain smoking, man.
Well, I tell you, these associations are there. They're present. They're real life, and people are dealing with them every day, and they don't understand
that
the connection that you're introducing right now.
So now what I'm going to tell you, when you hit these triggers, now this is what happens, man, and you and I deal with this a lot with folks. They start to feel guilty because they quote backslid, right? What happened was they don't even know what happened. Then they feel bad. They beat themselves up about it. Hey, stop. So what happened was your brain got hijacked by an old autopilot meta program, a habit that was triggered that had been lying dormant because you had changed that habit, but that roadway was still there. Now think about this. If it was I-85 or the interstate and nobody traveled on it for like 20 years, would the road still be there, Dutch?
The road still be there, but the grass will grow all over it.
Right, but at any time you started, right, as soon as traffic started on it again, though, what would happen with all the grass and everything?
It would clear up.
Immediately be fine. Again. Right, so the pathway is still there. So I'm going to give you all like 3 triggers. There's environmental triggers, there's social triggers, and emotional triggers. And listen, now the conventional wisdom is to avoid triggers. I don't like that, because if you try to avoid the sand trap, where's the ball going?
To the sand trap.
So what I want you to do is replace it with positive triggers. We're looking for triggers that get us back on the path of the healthy habits, the healthy autopilot program, the healthy neural pathways. I'm going to set myself up with those triggers. I'm going to be aware of the triggers that would put me down the path of unhealthy habits and meta programs, and then I'm going to reroute to the healthy triggers. But I have to identify the unhealthy ones first so I know what to replace. Does that make sense?
Brilliant. Absolutely.
All right, so the environmental triggers. And you guys all know this, man. You know it. Have you ever been driving anywhere, Dutch, and you heard a song that brought you back to like high school?
Oh, yeah.
That's an environmental trigger. You heard something. You heard a sound. You know what one of my environmental triggers is?
What's that?
Firecrackers, man. I cannot stand firecrackers. I'll be diving under this desk. Because what does that trigger for me?
Gunfire or some sort of conflict.
Right. Now, this is the funny thing, because when it's totally out of context. I'd be laying on my rack in Afghanistan and indirect fire be going off in the bunker. You know, people are like, go to the bunker. After about the first week, man, you don't even get out of bed, man. You just like pull your flak jacket up over you, right? So you're desensitized to it. But when I'm sitting in my living room with my wife and kids, I don't want to hear firecrackers on 4th of July. It triggers. Right? You know, the other one is when you walk into the mall and you smell that, the cinnamon buns thing.
Cinnabuns or whatever it is, I think. Yeah.
Man, what's that trigger? Be like, man. You'd be like, Yeah, I mean, you could almost be carried on the aroma.
Yeah.
Right?
Good stuff.
Environmental triggers, right? Now, how about like if you went to always went to vacation as a kid somewhere, and then now another one for me, and I wrote about this in my book at the very beginning of the book, the introduction. I talk about the warrior culture and going back to Camp Lejeune and Onslow Beach. We take our kids there every year for vacation, right? That's what we've been doing since they were little. And there's an environmental trigger whenever I drive through those gates.
Nice. And you bring back memories for me, man. You know, I graduated from high school at Camp Lejeune, so
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, and I guarantee you, I hope people are taking notes. I encourage you to take notes.
This is a good show, man.
Yeah, when Andrew goes off on the science and stuff, and he's giving you these lists and these examples, I encourage you to take notes, because while I understand you're sitting there and you're shaking your head, and you're like, man, you know, I know this is, you know, I know that's right. Now, one thing you can do is take the notes, because you can go back and you can take yourself through that again. So then you'll have time to not only just shake your head and say, yeah, I remember that, but you can start practicing some of the things that Andrew's saying about replacing some of the triggers. So you can literally do that. You can literally replace those triggers with positive.
I have a playlist that gets me energized, that keeps me grateful, that brings me back to happy memories, that triggers, you know, relaxed, calm. I have a playlist that does it.
And, you know, the funny thing is, Andrew, that a lot of people have the playlists that put them in certain places. But again, I'm going back to this. I'm going to keep going back to this. But they don't understand what's going on, so they can't maximize it.
Right.
They use it for things, but they don't use it for what it's great for, and they don't take it to what it could be greater for. Like, people use it just to relax themselves in the moment, not realizing that those same triggers can be used to make your business more successful, to make you healthier, to improve relationships, but we're just using them to take a nap.
Right.
You know, and that's the thing. The power of these things is once you become, you know, knowledgeable about the statistics and the science and some of the things we're sharing with you, you go, wow. And I've been using that as a doorstop all these years.
Yeah. I love it. Taking a nap at a doorstop. Right. It's so true, man. You're just so spot on with that. You know, it's like we use it to doorstop and take a nap, or it's a paperweight or whatever. I love it. Yeah, it's good.
Absolutely. And we're powerful. So what we're revealing is these superpowers that you have that you're not aware of, this other identity that you've been covering up with a suit, when you got this red and blue suit up under that suit with an S on your chest, but you've been covering it with this 3-piece suit or whatever role you have in life, or whatever's been beating you down in life, whether it's covered with mud, covered with nonsense, covered with gossip, or the things that are keeping you down in your life, a bad relationship. So you're covered in all that stuff, and I can't see the S on your chest. So once you learn to strip that stuff away, man, and you realize what you were really made for and what you're capable of, actually, the sky's the limit.
It is. It totally is. Now, the next one is a social trigger. Now, we're going to kind of step into it a little bit here, because your family, your friends, and who you hang out with, it's a big deal. It can either make you or break you with your habits. And we talk about this in the phalanx and all the time, Dutch. I mean, all the time. I mean, I think even last night, I think I brought up the stat, right? We talked about that New England Journal of Medicine study. It was over 30 years and 12,000 people in the study. And what they found was that if people considered each other friends, if their friend was obese, they had a 57% chance of being obese themselves. Now
let me warn you now. Yeah, you're going into the neighborhood of a lot of people right now. You're what they say, you're Mr. Rogers. You're Mr. Rogers.
Put my cardigan on. I'll try and say it nicer. You're talking about social factors.
You're talking about family. You're talking about all those things. You're going into the neighborhood. Just want to warn you before you get off.
All right, so we're taking a break. When I get back, everyone be forewarned, I'm going Mr. Rogers on you. You're listening to the Get Warrior Tough radio show with Andrew Wittman and Dutch Coleman, and I'll bring back my cardigan.